cells to react appropriately to invaders. So it basically will train them to defend themselves, but also it trains so that your skin and your body don't have excessive irritation and excessive flare-ups, which is a problem in eczema and can also be a problem in acne, because acne can also kind of be itchy and it can hurt. When there's imbalance in the skin microbiome called dysbiosis, like in bacterial acne where the acne overgrows, and we'll see, there can also be other types of dysbiosis. So acne doesn't just have to be bacterial. So I just want to point out today we're talking about bacterial acne, but if the colonization happens by an organism called Malassezia, that's called fungal acne, and that's treated completely differently. You actually need an acne antifungal topical, which is actually a prescription topical. In case of eczema, it's the Staph aureus that we talked about. And in the case of rosacea, which has many similarities to acne, especially in the inflammation and the inflammation cytokines, there's a colonization by, it kind of looks like a burrowing worm called Demodex, and it lives slightly underneath your skin. And then what's interesting is that Demodex can be colonized by Staph aureus. So rosacea has almost this two-layer kind of microbiome disruption. So taking care of this microbiome, I know we, like our fragrances and our harsh cleansers, but actually taking care of that skin microbiome is way more important than we think, because it really does play a key role in skin health. And less is more. And so one of the things you will hear today, and this is true not just for acne, but for skincare in general, a very gentle cleanser, a good non-comedogenic moisturizer are key. Not overdoing things like chemical peels or alcohol-based products which dry out the skin. And part of what you'll also hear today is if your skin gets inflamed and the skin barrier gets damaged, just like in eczema, it dries out, which is why people can have this oily but really dry feeling skin when they have acne, is actually important for skin radiance and for skin health. Now, to give you guys just a little bit of a perspective, since we were talking about these layers, so the skin microbiome at the top isn't just this uniform layer. It's basically doesn't have exactly a fixed thickness. These microbes, they exist, it's a very kind of thin patchy film on the top of the stratum corneum and within the hair follicle. So it kind of goes along the surface and then goes into the hair follicles, as we'll see, and often into the glands and sometimes into the oil production glands, which can be colonized. And it can also, these microbes can kind of connect to one another and hold on to one another, and that's what we call biofilms. And these biofilms can be maybe, micron, a human hair is about 10 to 20 microns. So it can be like literally a super thin film to maybe tens of microns thick, but they're incredibly hard to separate. Like when these bacteria kind of lock together in these biofilms, they are really hard to get rid of. And so acne is one of the organisms that can cause biofilms. Staph aureus is another bacterium that can cause biofilms. And in many places, the skin microbiome can be just a few bacterial cells deep. So it's super, super, super thin. It's like microns. It's about, you can think of it, it's about as deep as if you pull a hair out and you look at it, that's about how deep or thick your microbiome layer is on top of your skin. And yet it is amazing how much it protects you and reduces basically colonization by pathogens. So microbiome is a very important key here for today. To give you other perspectives, so the epidermis, it's thinnest on your eyelids. It's a bit thicker over most of your body, and on the palms and soles of your feet, it's the thickest. So it's about 0.5 millimeter to 1.5 millimeters in the thickest place. It's about 0.1 to 0.2 millimeters over most of your body, and it's thinnest on your eyelids where it's about 0.05 millimeters, so about 50 microns. The dermis, which is that layer underneath that we saw of the epidermis where you have your blood vessels and more immune cells and kind of anchors the epidermis, is about 1 to 2 millimeters thick. Again, the eyelids are maybe 0.5 millimeter thick, and in the back and the scalp, since we'll be talking about body acne later, it's about 3 millimeters in some people. So overall, though, when you think about it, like on a ruler, like if I take a ruler here, your skin is about this thick. Like the whole thickness of your skin is about that thick. So it's an incredibly thin layer that covers the entire surface of your body. And taking care of it, though, is incredibly important for health in general. So You might be wondering, okay, well, what does all of this have to do with acne? We'll be talking about how inflammation in the hair follicles affects, basically your overall skin barrier and the overall skin health. So you just remember, everything is a system. We won't be talking about the gut and hormones much, except for at the end, where I'll talk a little bit more about supplements and the skin gut and the hormonal skin relationship. But let's just do a quick intro to what acne really is. By way of introduction, people can have genetic predispositions. If you have oily skin, you probably inherited that from one of your parents. That's overproduction of sebum. It is produced by hormonal imbalance. So in periods of our life like puberty or menopause or pregnancy, and so that's when androgens, basically the male hormone producing hormones, get amplified. And then issues with, it's called follicular keratinization, and that's basically where your skin cells die, and they may die more quickly, and that's what results in plugging of the pores. And then, of course, there's the bacterial colonization and the inflammation. So with that, let's basically dive into just a very quick basic acne primer, and then you should have all the nomenclature, you should know all the words, and you should be ready to kind of, we'll start delving into what really is the acne inflammasome, why is that important, and then what are the new treatments that are being developed, and basically one of our kind of really novel treatment, which is why we're all here, which is the Champ Bioserum, which actually modulates the microbiome. So it's not just about supporting the microbiome. Now we're learning more about it, that we can actually start shifting it to prevent acne or to help people who have acneic tendencies with some of these predispositions. So now we'll just do a very quick. Acne is a common skin condition that affects millions of people globally. It's the most common skin conditions in the U.S., affecting an estimated 50 million people, with approximately 85% of those between the ages of 12 and 24. Inflammatory acne is a type of acne that involves pimples, red, swollen, sore bumps that contain pus, dead skin cells, and excess oil called sebum. It's correlated to certain strains of Cutibacterium acnes bacteria growing in and infecting clogged pores, triggering the body's immune system to spring into action and fight off the infection. In healthy skin, its naturally produced sebum and dead skin cells come out of the body through pores. However, when these pores get clogged with bacteria, congealed sebum, and dead skin cells, the liquid sebum gets stuck below the surface of the skin. That stretches the pore, as you can see in the figure, and leads to acne. Certain genes can increase inflammation All right, can you guys hear me again, hopefully, with the videos? Uh-oh. Oh, shit. What happened here? Okay, so I guess I can't. Okay, great. Sorry about that. So I'm still not good at like getting in and out of these videos. So what we can see is essentially with acne, there's many different forms it can take, whether it's just a pore where the sebum congealed, so basically a white head. Then if it oxidizes, it becomes a black head. That's why it becomes black. If it gets clogged and then inflammation starts and the acne bacteria really overpopulate the pore, that makes it red because the acne is now driving inflammation. The inflammation is driving blood flow to stop the inflammation. There's all these inflammatory markers, and that basically causes pimples that we can also call pustules. And those are the things that are either kind of white and they're filled with pus, or they're kind of yellowy and they're filled with pus. And then you can kind of see that cone of the pus. And then if it's deeper in the skin, it can become a cyst or it can become a nodule. And that's a whole different type of acne. That's where you do need to see a dermatologist. You probably do need to get isotretinoin. Lasers, there's now new laser approaches to treating kind of deeper acne with cysts and nodules. So there's a lot of new technologies coming forward there. So what we're going to be treating here and talking about is really the bacterial acne, so pimples, pustules, and comedones, so blackheads and whiteheads. So the more surface-based acne. And again, any medical questions, go see a dermatologist or doctor. You know, we're not offering medical advice here, but we are essentially showing you how to manage this and new technologies for approaching acne. But any detailed questions should definitely be addressed by your doctor. So how do doctors actually address acne? So there is now interest in alternatives and complements to long-term oral antibiotics, which have been a long-term type of treatment. The problem is a lot of antibiotic use or antibiotics over 6 months. They can drive resistance, antimicrobial resistance by other kinds of bacteria in your body, as well as it can severely disrupt your gut microbiome. So neither of those is actually a good outcome. So traditional treatments typically included topical retinoids, benzoyl peroxide combinations, and for things like female hormonal acne, off-label medication like spironolactone or Accutane, which is isotretinoin in more severe cases with cysts and with nodules. Now today, basically dermatologists are now limiting the antibiotics to shorter courses, and they're looking at hormonal modulation in appropriate patients. So basically, for example, patients with polycystic ovary syndrome, much more antioxidant type cocktails, and potentially also probiotics for targeting specific immune markers in the body in acne and reducing basically that acne inflammasome that we're going to be talking about. So these emerging, the really emerging topical approaches are more microbiome-friendly strategies. So there's some products coming out on the market in research with nitric oxide releasing topicals for, again, inflammation reduction, narrow spectrum type of antibiotic topicals that spare most of the good bacteria, the commensals, or live skin probiotics that we're going to be talking about today with selected lactobacillus that basically can directly compete with acne and other pathobionts and reduce the inflammation. Lactobacillus is really good at reducing inflammation. But, you know, obviously these new treatments aren't going to replace the basic dermatological care, but they do aim to treat acne effectively while preserving that microbiome and the gut microbiome as much as possible. So in terms of retinoids for cysts and nodules, there are oral retinoids, which actually shrink, they physically shrink the size of your oil glands, and that reduces and inhibits the sebum production. And then there's also oral isotretinoin, which works the same way. That's why people after these treatments also tend to have incredibly dry skin And if it's overdone, again, it can lead to a skin that is very eczema-like. Oral antibiotics, those are used to reduce bacteria and to reduce inflammation. The most common ones are tetracycline, minocycline, and doxycycline, or macrolides like erythromycin or azithromycin. I don't know, some of you might have already been on those. The problem is, as I mentioned earlier, not just the antibiotic resistance and the gut dysbiosis, but really long-term use, like over 6 months, can increase risk of autoimmune diseases. And basically, there's now an association with certain chronic diseases, including colon cancer, in the literature. For hormonal treatment, whether that's adolescents or most commonly in adult women, the goal there, whether it's putting a person on birth control, that's what was done kind of in the 80s and 90s when I was growing up, or spironolactone. Basically, the collateral damage there is it can give you really high potassium levels in your blood, which can lead to muscle cramps and hypotension in the case of spironolactone. Or it can, you're on the contraceptives and then you're off the contraceptives when your acne gets better, and that can lead to irregular menstrual cycles. So again, there are interventions for more serious acne. And then benzoyl peroxide, which we all know, which we can pick up at Target. It kills C. acnes incredibly effectively, but it's also quite harsh, and it causes oxidative stress in your skin barrier. So again, long-term use is not the greatest. We also know it bleaches our pillowcases. Topical retinoids like isotretinoin, again, they can cause initial skin irritation and purging, which many of us may have experienced, but they can also lead to dryness and peeling and redness, scaling, burning. But the biggest issue is sun sensitivity, so you have to be very careful to be mindful of using SPF when you're using topical retinoids. Salicylic acid, we all know that's a very gentle additive for unclogging pores. And then if you want an alternative to benzoyl peroxide, you can basically use sulfur. It's much more gentle, and it also does reduce oiliness. And it also is pretty effective in killing C. acne. So if we think about what we're trying to solve for here with acne, as we look basically at the next presentation, we're trying to balance out the sex hormones. So these are the androgens like testosterone, DHT, and androstenedione, because they all increase sebum production. They all increase oil production. And some of them can also accelerate skin death, and basically skin death along the pore clogs the pore. So those are the sex hormones. Then steroid hormones like cortisol, the stress hormone. Cortisol increases androgens, and then you have that androgen going back to the oily skin and the clogged pores. Elevated insulin levels, because that also increases androgens. And that's also why a lot of dermatologists are now saying, cut the sugar, cut the fried food, stop alcohol, and stop smoking, and especially on the sugar. So that's the elevated insulin levels. And inflammation, which is the alcohol smoking, is basically inflammation increases the cellular level stress in general, which is not just causing aging or redness, but it causes the sebum to oxidize, which creates that low oxygen environment where we will see C. acnes changes. It genetically changes what it does, and certain types of acne, which we're going to now see, become virulent, and they cause more inflammation. So then you get into this nasty feedback loop of the acne has more sebum, so it multiplies, it becomes virulent because there's no oxygen, so it irritates the sebum, the sebocytes, producing the sebum even more, so they produce even more sebum. And that's how you get those pimples that start out really small and then can grow really, really big. And that's your body not being able, in a way, to turn off those inflammatory signals all by itself, which is why it needs help. So we will now listen to, there are different kinds of acne. So there's not just one kind of acne, there's multiple kinds of acne, and it acts differently. And so that's another thing that we need to be mindful about when we think about acne. It's not just acne is bad. Talk about the different contributors to the acne inflammasome. First is the acne bacteria. Although Cutibacterium acnes sounds like a bacteria that will trigger the worst acne, C. acnes is actually a natural part of the skin's microflora and plays an important role in maintaining skin health. In fact, there are different strains of C. acnes, and some are commensal, that is beneficial, like strains Roman numeral 1A1, 1B2, 1B3, and Roman numeral 2, while others are pathogenic, that is bad, strains Roman numeral A2, 1B1, and you can see this summarized in the chart in the top right. So the statement that C. acnes causes acne is actually an overgeneralization, and we must look deeper into the microbiome as to why certain bacterial strains are beneficial and can even help prevent acne, like the type 2 in the bottom figure, which is called acne defendants, or type 3, whose role we don't even know yet, while others in type 1, like the 1A2 and 1B1 strains we just talked about, can become virulent under certain conditions, like in an oxygen-depleted, sebum-filled plug pore. In fact, it turns out that the same C. acnes strain can change its behavior based on its environment and based on the amount of oxygen. Now, the second contributor is obviously sebum. So skin sebum, or natural skin oil, is a good servant but a bad master. Skin sebum is normally excreted from the hair follicles, as you can see in the top left figure. It coats the upper layer of the skin and acts as a natural barrier that protects the skin from external influences like bacteria and pollutants. It also provides nutrients to the skin's natural microbiome. But if there's an excessive amount of sebum in hair follicles, it can mix with dead skin cells, forming comedones, that is, clogged pores. This oxygen-free environment in the clogged pore then becomes fertile ground for bacteria, that is, C. acnes, which can then exponentially multiply and contribute to the formation of acne, like we can see in the top right figure. The acne inflammasome, shown in the bottom diagram, plays a significant role in the development of acne lesions, the pimples and the pustules, due to its activation of an inflammatory response within the skin. When this acne inflammasome is activated, it releases pro-inflammatory molecules that promote inflammation, stimulate excess sebum production in the skin, and disrupt the normal shedding of skin cells. This biological perfect storm leads to clogged pores, excessive growth of acne-causing bacteria within the clogged pores, and the formation of painful, unsightly, pus-filled pimples. A dynamic shift in the microenvironment can then trigger a different transcriptional response of the microbiota. C. acnes in a lipid-rich, hypoxic environment, that is no oxygen, promotes anaerobic fermentation and production of short-chain fatty acids that activate an epigenetic mechanism and enhances the toll-like receptor 2 mediated production of IL-6, IL-8, and TNF-alpha in human keratinocytes. This is skin inflammation that then turns the inflammasome into a positive feedback loop of inflammation, sebum overproduction, and acne pimples everywhere. Now let's look at the skin barrier. A healthy skin barrier, like the one shown in the figure at the top, is more than just a protective shield. If you remember the top layer, it's the microbiome, it's an ecosystem. The skin barrier, comprised of the epidermis and dermis that we showed earlier in the subcutaneous tissue, provides niches for various commensal microbiota. These microorganisms, including Staphylococcus epidermis, Cutibacterium acnes, and experimentally studied Lactobacillus and Malassezia fungi, interact with skin cells, contributing to barrier integrity, hydration, and immune modulation. Commensals, that is the good bacteria like S. epidermidis, support wound healing by producing butyrate that ramps up antimicrobial peptide production in keratinocytes and acts like a natural antibiotic factory on your skin. Staphylococcus hominis inhibits the growth of pathogens like Staphylococcus aureus. Others, like C. acne, produce propionic acid that strengthens the skin barrier by activating peroxisome proliferator activated receptor alpha, or PPAR, in keratinocytes. Indole 3-aldehyde is a metabolite from skin bacteria like lactobacillus that quiet inflammation by steering immune cells towards tolerance instead of attack. But in acne, this delicate balance of the microbiome becomes disrupted. When the acne inflammasome is activated in severe acne, the chronic inflammation and immune cell activity caused by the body's pro-inflammatory molecules can compromise the skin barrier and negatively affect its ability to protect the body. A compromised skin barrier then manifests in several ways, including increased transepidermal water loss, That is, water moisture evaporates more quickly from the skin, leading to dryness and dehydration. Impaired barrier function, that is, the inflammation associated with activation of the acne inflammasome, weakens the skin barrier to the point to make it more permeable or porous, which allows external irritants, allergens, and bacteria to penetrate the skin more easily, which leads to further inflammation and potential skin damage, and finally, delayed healing. A compromised skin barrier can hinder the skin's natural healing process, so acne lesions may take longer to heal and may be more prone to infection and scarring. So this is why it's important to also treat the skin barrier as part of any topical acne regime and not use harsh products which will increase long-term damage. This means gentle non-stripping cleansers, hydrating soothing toners, and antioxidant-rich non-comedogenic moisturizers that are all skin microbiome friendly. All right. So now that we understand those factors, so it's a combination of microbiome imbalance, it's a combination of inflammation, it's a combination of production of sebum, I guess the question is, what can we do about it? So obviously a lot of the products that have been used traditionally, like benzoyl peroxide and retinoids, they don't have the greatest effect on the microbiome. So that's certainly not, they act in a very different way. And so what scientists are now looking at is, are there actually species, for example, like lactobacillus, that can actually be useful in changing the composition of the microbiome and shifting it? So for example, is it possible to shift the microbiome away from the dominance of C. acnes and maybe put it into the favor of S. epidermidis, as we heard, which is a commensal, which produces butyrate and actually helps strengthen the skin barrier, so that in the process, your skin barrier becomes stronger, so that that transepidermal loss, that water evaporation, which dries out your skin barrier, leads to more inflammation, again, can break that cycle of acne and calm that acne inflammasome, possibly even reduce those inflammatory markers like we were talking about, the IL-6, the IL-8, the IL-1A, or the TNF-alpha. And can basically reduce sebum production. You definitely want to be washing away excess sebum, but you don't want to be stripping all the sebum, because then the rest of the microbiome that's still living on your face has nothing to eat. And I should just mention that the sebum is part of the nutritional profile of the skin microbiome. If we compare the skin microbiome to the gut microbiome, well, we eat, you know, we may not be eating all the time, but there is food in our digestive system kind of in a continuous way. So our gut microbiome is getting nutrients, ideally, obviously, high quality nutrients like plant-based fibers and polyphenol antioxidants, but in a varied diet, kind of a very colorful diet. But so that gut microbiome is being fed kind of in a continuous way, unless, you know, you're on a hunger strike, in which case your gut microbiome gets very unhappy. And so the skin microbiome doesn't have the benefit, like we don't plaster food on our skin, so it pretty much has the skin sebum that comes out of the hair follicles as its primary nutrition. So if we strip all of the skin sebum, you might have a really great squeaky clean feeling on your face, but there is no nutrition for your skin microbiome, so that's not good for the skin microbiome either. So again, managing acne isn't about extremes, it's about rebalancing. And so if there's one thing you walk away from this live with, it's that moderation. Again, no complicated excessive routines. Everything less is more. You know, yes, you want less sebum, but you don't want no sebum. You know, reducing it by 40–45% is usually enough without losing that natural skin microbiome that protects you. And so we'll now talk about, we'll do one more quick kind of technical presentation about where things are going, how people are using different kinds of bacteria, and that will kind of give you all of the technical background that you need to then understand the product that I've been kind of building up to for the last 40 minutes, our Shant Bioserum, our Skin Duo Serum, which is also based on Lactobacillus plantarum. So I'm just going to do a little bit of a spoiler here, because that's why I'm showing you other people's research. So we're not the only people looking in this direction, and it's great when other scientists are looking, because then you can see if the data between the different science groups are actually reproducible. And we have this product through a collaboration with a group in Malta which specializes in measuring the microbiome, and so they developed this product for us. And so now we'll basically talk about kind of what is the state of the research in using lactobacillus. In our case, plantarum. Some other research groups are studying other kinds of lactobacillus. What does it do? How does it work? How is it good for your skin? How is it good for acne? And then we can talk, then we'll go and basically, then I'll do a quick demo about how to use the product, and then we'll show you some of our clinical results, which to me are very, very exciting, and actually demonstrate that this technology, all this technical stuff that we've been talking about, it basically boils down to it works. So without further ado, let's talk about Lactobacillus plantarum and new methods for acne treatment. So now let's talk about state-of-the-art acne treatments. The pilosebaceous unit, which is shown at the top, is a complex skin structure comprising of the hair follicle, its associated sebaceous gland, the oil gland, and the erector pili muscle, all functioning together to produce hair, secrete sebum for lubrication, and provide skin protection. This unit originates from the epidermis and extends into the dermis, playing crucial roles in skin health, so its dysfunction linked to common issues like acne, folliculitis, and seborrheic dermatitis. Acne vulgaris arises not simply from bacterial overgrowth, but from complex host microbiome interactions centered on this pilosebaceous unit. Cutibacterium acnes and Staphylococcus epidermidis are two dominant species in the skin microbiome and generally beneficial skin residents. Acne is linked more to shifts in the strain composition, that is the bad acne we talked about, virulence factors, and biofilm formation rather than total C. acne numbers. Metagenomic studies reveal acne-associated C. acnes lineages, virulence factors, and adhesion biofilm genes, while health-associated strains often possess fewer virulence determinants. These microbes interact with innate and adaptive immune system through the TLR signaling, antimicrobial peptides, and inflammatory pathways, contributing to lesion formation. The problem then is that current antibiotic-heavy treatments can result in antibiotic resistance and microbiome disruption, while emerging microbiome-based therapies like probiotics, phages, nitric oxide-releasing agents, or live commensals, and improved models add a promising future direction for more targeted, ecology-aware management of acne. Now let's talk about a specific bacterium, Lactobacillus plantarum. Is a versatile gram-positive probiotic bacterium that, when applied topically or used in skincare, actually strengthens the skin barrier, reduces inflammation, and inhibits pathogens. It's considered a beneficial transient colonizer that improves skin health by actively rebalancing the microbiome towards a healthier, more diverse state. More specifically, these beneficial effects are achieved through the production of antimicrobial peptides, modulation of immune response, and the activity of metabolites. So why does it have potential for treating acne? Well, one, pathogen inhibition. It inhibits growth of harmful bacteria, like Staph aureus or C. acnes, which is commonly associated with skin inflammation and infections. Anti-inflammatory and acne control because it suppresses pro-inflammatory cytokines and can be used as an acne mitigating agent by reducing inflammation and balancing the skin microbiome. And finally, it actually enhances the skin barrier with hydration. It enhances barrier repair, significantly reduces transepidermal water loss, and promotes the production of key structural components like ceramides. So it can not only help in managing dermatitis and eczema, but also acne and improving overall skin moisture. So research is now showing that carefully selected lactobacillus strains can actually act as topical skin probiotics to improve mild to moderate acne. We now know that lactobacilli are natural, though low abundance, members of the skin microbiome. Recent studies, like this one, have focused on 3 robust, well-characterized strains for their safety and ability in vitro to inhibit C. acnes and Staph aureus, as well as reduce the lipase activity, that is the sebum production triggered by C. acnes, and to produce lactic acid. In this specific study, these 3 strains were microencapsulated in an oil and water cream to maintain viability and applied twice daily in an open-label pilot and a randomized double-blind placebo-controlled trial. Basically, treatment transiently increased lactobacilli on the skin, selectively reduced staphylococci and Cutibacterium, and produced a significantly greater and relative rapid reduction in inflammatory lesions, which you can see in the bottom, versus placebo, with effects persisting 4 weeks after stopping, which generally demonstrated that topically delivered lactobacillus is a safe, targeted microbiome modulating option for managing common acne. All right, so basically now we know that lactobacillus has a lot of benefits, including skin hydration, which was something that when we started out on this, we would have never expected. So now I will introduce, this is basically the refill pouch of our microbiome balancing skin duo serum that basically came to us through a collaboration with BioArt. And when you first buy it, because it comes in these syringes, so it's basically, you can see there's white powder here. That's the lyophilized lactobacillus. It also contains hyaluronic acid and mannitol. And I'll show you basically what you do is this is a 2-day dose. And when you activate this with water, it actually produces a serum that you then apply to the regions that you're trying to treat for acne. And because it came packaged like this, and my son, who was one of the first users, made a comment of, "Mom, this is going to look like, you know, I'm shooting up with cocaine." We decided to make it a little bit more presentable, so we developed a little box. And this box basically allows you to take it out of the pouch and to compartmentalize it. So you can basically have your lactobacillus syringe in here. Then you have the syringe that you use for mixing up above. And so these are like nice little magnetic flaps, so you can store basically the product in here. So it's really easy to use and it looks nice in your bathroom. And then there's the connectors. And then there's a little area for a cup of water that you can actually pour the water into. And so what you do is, so there's a connector. There's the empty syringe that you use for mixing and to actually split this because it becomes 2 milliliters. So you have 3 components. And what you do is you basically first take your syringe and you put 2 milliliters of water into it. So I'm going to do that from the little cup here. So you can see I basically have 2 milliliters. I'll get rid of the air bubble to make sure that I really only have 2 milliliters. So I need to add a little bit more water. So this is basically 2 milliliters of water. And then I put the connector on it like that. Then I take the plug off of this syringe and I connect it to the connector like that. And then I mix it. And I do that by basically moving one syringe. Let me do it in a way that you guys can see. So basically I move the water into here. So I basically pull to get the water in here, and then I pull the other one to get it back. And so you kind of do that about 10 to 15 times. And what you'll end up with, I'm just going to do it. It's easier to do it horizontally so you can kind of see we're mixing it up. And after about 10 swishes back and forth, you end up with a really nice serum, which is basically your treatment serum. And so you use 1 milliliter on day 1. You put the syringe in the fridge to basically keep the lactobacillus as active as possible. And then you use the second one the next day. And you basically get 15 of these syringes, which basically makes you 30 doses of the serum. So that's basically 1 month's worth of treatment. And typically it takes about 2 months to see optimal results. So there we go. We're kind of mixed. We have some bubbles in here. So you can basically see I get 1 milliliter in each syringe. And then depending on which one you want to use and which one you store, I normally take it off the original lactobacillus syringe. And then I plug that up with its original plug, and then that's ready to go in the fridge for the next day. This serum is typically applied during the nighttime, so right before you go to bed, because you don't want to have other topicals and other creams and SPFs on top of it. And so you clean your face, you have a nicely cleansed face, put the serum on, go to bed. And so basically This is what the serum looks like. And then there's kind of one more really important point is, yes, you can apply it with your fingers, but there's actually, because you don't want to be spreading bacteria, just like when we talked about staph, we actually have a great partnership with Lunescent, and Lunescent makes an applicator tool. The Codex one is white because we wanted it to look as medical grade as possible. And this is actually one of the neatest applicators so that you can be completely finger free. So the product comes with 2 different applicators. There's one that has little bumpies on it. So if you want to massage, and usually actually if the serum is in the fridge, it's nice and cold. So it has also a very nice cooling effect. What's nice about the applicator is your fingers would actually warm it up, so it wouldn't be as cooling. And you can, in fact, keep this in the fridge too if you want to maximize the cooling effect. But this is actually really neat. So it has a swivel head. It has the applicator, and you can just take the applicator off, or you can wash the whole thing and sterilize it basically in your dishwasher. But this is medical grade silicone. And so what's really nice about it is it protects all the active ingredients, including the lactobacillus in the serum. So this is actually ideal for microbiome modulating gels and serums. And you can apply it basically without any kind of mess. So 100% platinum grade silicone, so 0 PFAS, so no forever chemicals, so you don't have to worry about that. You can also get a much more controlled dosage. So if you only have a milliliter of this bioserum, and for example, you want to apply it, you might be going, well, I have back knee. I need to get it on my back. So first of all, it's great because you can use the applicator. And it gives your hand extra leverage, but you can actually spread this 1 milliliter with this applicator over very, very large surfaces. So for example, if you have acne on your face or décolleté, you can also use a little bit on your back as prevention. So this makes this 1 dose, this 1 milliliter dose, go a very, very long way in terms of surface area. And the beauty is this way your hands or any dirt or any bacteria on your hands are not interacting with that lactobacillus. So what you know is that if you have a clean applicator, you are actually not introducing anything else onto your skin other than the lactobacillus. So that's kind of an important point. And so you can basically, again, dose it in a very accurate way. So you can see, for example, if I were applying this on my back, I'm just going to use my hand for now, but you can see it really goes a long way. So I could probably, pull this up and do, my whole arm very comfortably, and there's still serum that's left over. So it's a great way to apply it. It also makes the application very smooth. It's very soothing, especially if it's chilled. So this is basically a great tool if you're going to be using these bioserums or any kind of microbiome modulating product. I really have to, give it a shout out because it's an important part of the system. Now let's basically take a look at more details and some of the clinical data. And what you'll see is what's really cool about this product is it really brings together this acne inflammasome. You'll see it reduces the inflammatory cytokines. It shifts the population away from C. acnes in the favor of S. epidermidis. It calms down the sebocytes, basically the cells in your sebaceous glands that are producing the sebum. So it reduces sebum production, but it doesn't eliminate it completely because you need that sebum to feed your microbiome. It definitely reduces inflammation a lot, and I don't want to spoil the numbers because they're super exciting. And then we also have clinical trials on actual humans. So we did kind of the 2D models, and there's the clinical trials that were done on humans. And there's a significant acne reduction and improvement in just overall skin health and skin parameters. So without further ado, I'm going to show you guys the slides. Now let's take a look at the BioArt Microbiome Balancing Skin Duo Serum, which is why we're all here today. So this lightweight serum delivers microbiome balancing actives and hyaluronic acid for rehydration. It's clinically proven to reduce the production of sebum, soothe the acne inflammasome and erythema, the redness, and shift the skin microbiome, resulting in a smaller C. acnes population. So it's ideal for acne-prone skin, but it also works very well for rosacea-prone skin. The key ingredients are Lactobacillus plantarum, that delivers anti-inflammatory and antibacterial activity to help balance C. acnes and S. epidermidis colonization, to reduce the formation of acne pimples. But it also helps improve skin hydration to reduce oxidative stress. Hyaluronic acid, as we all know, helps increase and retain moisture content in the skin, which is important for wound healing and also reduces the itch associated with dryness. And finally, mannitol binds water molecules and helps to enhance the skin's moisture retaining capacity. Now, the most comprehensive way to treat acne is by addressing the issues affecting both skin and gut or hormones. So therefore, we recommend combining this probiotic serum with the Codex Shant topicals like face scrubs, toners, oil control creams, spot treatments, moisturizers that are microbiome preserving, with either a Shant Clear Skin probiotic supplement if there's gut-based acne, or the Shant Skin De-Stress supplement for hormonal acne. So if we look at the clinical results, we basically did an in vitro model on 2D cultured human primary sebocytes, and you can basically look at the activity assays against C. acnes and S. epidermidis at the top, and both species were statistically decreased after the application of the Skin Duo serum, so it had an effect on both species. In the bottom, we see skin microbiome modulation on 40 subjects between the ages of 18 and 45 with grade 2 or 3 acneic skin that apply the serum to their face for 28 days. And the composition of the skin microbiome was assessed with genomic sequencing. And what basically we saw was that the specific microbiome profile showed a reduction in C. acnes and an increase in S. epidermidis and an increase in Lactobacillus plantarum, indicating the Skin Duo serum was effectively targeting the pathogenic acnes, which is the known contributor to acne. Then we also looked at basically sebaceous lipogenesis, basically oil production. So again, when we tested it in 2D human sebocytes, the cells that produce sebum, the serum after incubation decreased lipid production by 43% when compared to untreated or other reference samples. Now, if there are liposaccharides, which induce expression of antimicrobial peptides and pro-inflammatory cytokines, so basically inflammation, the serum treatment decreased the lipid production by 57%. And you can see this also from the immunofluorescence staining, which confirmed negligible lipid presence in the original. So we now know that the serum also reduces sebum production. Then we looked at inflammation, because we know acne is an inflammatory condition. And so we looked at basically how does can we create a dynamic shift in this environment? And we measured how the bioserum can reduce inflammation. So the human primary sebocyte model was infected with C. acnes and S. epidermidis, and after 48 hours, we looked at the cytokines IL-1A, IL-6, and IL-8. With the serum treatment, these cytokine secretion levels decreased by over 90%. So that basically means that these cytokines which cause the inflammation of the pore can be managed to reduce sebum production driven by the inflammation. And finally, we looked at 10 subjects between the ages of 18 and 45, again with grade 2 or 3 acne, who were randomized and put the Skin Duo serum on their face for 28 days, and we collected their microbiome samples. And we again saw that the relative abundance of the microbiome community, basically between the time of the study started and the 28 days, there was a significant decrease in C. acnes in 9 out of the 10 subjects, and really no major difference noted in the staph, and there was actually plantarum significantly present in about half of them. Then we looked at 50 subjects between 18 and 65, again with grade 2 or 3 acneic skin, and we counted the acne lesions, comedones, inflammations, papulopustules, nodules, cysts, were counted by a dermatologist, and then we basically saw, again with the serum treatment between day 0 and day 28, a significant decrease in all lesion types, as you can see in the chart at the bottom, and a significant improvement in overall skin health. So what this told us is that this is an ideal method for modulating the microbiome and treating the acne inflammasome. That is sebum overproduction, skin inflammation, and skin barrier repair. So that's why we're so excited about this product. And then you might be also wondering, well, why is there a bacterial set there? Why is there a body acne set there? Why is there a hormonal set there? Well, that's because, again, this set is part of a larger system. So if we look at acne, you will have pimples. You will want to treat those pimples. And so that's why we have the spot heroes. So that's kind of the little blue tube in the bacterial acne set, the body acne set, the hormonal acne set. It's kind of your general pimple treatment. It contains our Shant complex. Maybe I'll talk for just a second about the Shant complex and what it is. So it's based on Ayurvedic medicine. It's a patented formula to control oiliness. Again, not totally eliminate the oil, but control oiliness, shed dead skin, reduce the pore size, and soothe redness. So again, everything that we've talked about with the acne inflammasome, it consists of Gotu kola. Some of you might know that as Centella asiatica, which really helps wound healing and reducing redness, which is important because the last thing you want is pitting or scarring after you have the pimple. Patchouli, progestamon cablin, which actually helps your skin achieve, you can call it balance, like it calms the skin. It's called homeostasis via the cannabinoid receptor system. So similar to, you know, the endocannabinoid receptor system, cannabinoids, marijuana, calming. Green microalgae, it's a algae called Tetracelmus chu, which is like this really cute green fluorescent algae, and that reduces the sebum production. And then there's a fucus. We talk a lot about racks and seaweeds and macroalgae because they have fucoidins, and fucoidins are anti-inflammatory large sugars called polysaccharides, and they really help comfort irritated skin and reduce inflammation. So again, the Shant complex was designed to hit this acne inflammasome. The Spot Hero specifically has 5% sulfur. So that's basically the colloidal sulfur is what helps dry out the skin surface to absorb the excess sebum and also to shed dead skin cells to help unclog pores. It's also good at, you know, C. acnes doesn't like it either. But it also has fruit acids and green tea. So green tea is an anti-inflammatory and antioxidant. And the fruit acids, it actually has 5 different fruit acids. So malic, glycolic, lactic, pyruvic, and tartaric. That's a mouthful, but they're basically alpha hydroxy acids that help increase the skin turnover rate without irritation. So what this does, it unclogs pores, it helps reduce the inflammation, it helps absorb the excess sebum, and then it helps the skin cell turnover to help the pore heal with antioxidants to reduce that oxidative stress to promote wound healing. So that's basically your general spot treatment for any pimple. And then depending on where the acne is, there's either a face scrub or a body scrub. So that's basically the difference between the body acne and then either the bacterial acne or the hormonal acne. And so for the face, we basically have a pore purifying face scrub. And it's basically kind of more of a creamy face scrub. The key here is that it does not dehydrate. It helps shed dead skin cells, so it helps unclog pores. It helps make the pores smaller, actually, even less visible. It contains 2% salicylic acid, so that's basically what helps purify the pores, get rid of the clogs of the congealed sebum, and exfoliate. It has milk thistle, which helps soothe redness. And it has jojoba grains. So basically these are hydrolyzed jojoba grains. So they're very, very small, very, very gentle. So again, you're not going to be stripping anything. And this basically is also, all of these products I should mention are My Microbiome certified. So there's some of the only over-the-counter acne products in the world that have the My Microbiome certification, which means they will not actually harm your microbiome. Then we also have a body scrub, and I'm just going to, for fun, put a blob of the body scrub versus the face scrub, because I just want to explain the difference. You might be like, well, why can't I use the face scrub on my body, or, you know, why can't I use the body scrub on my face? And short answer is, yeah, you technically can. You can see one of them is more reddish. That's because that has cranberry husks in it, which are not ground as finely, because if you remember, your face skin is about 1/3 the thickness of your body skin. So you absolutely don't want to irritate your facial skin, which is thinner. So that's why we have the very gentle hydrolyzed jojoba oil versus cranberry husks, because oftentimes your body's shedding more skin and the skin is thicker, say on your back. So you actually want more exfoliation, and that's what gives it the slightly different color. And then the other difference is that the face scrub has the milk thistle versus the body scrub has white birch bark. That actually helps brighten skin and restore skin elasticity, because people often get like these brown spots where they used to have acne on their back. But it's also very useful because this is a body scrub. You can use it to treat actinic keratosis. So for those of you who have actinic keratosis, for example, on your forearms, which is typically where it happens, this is actually great. It's also great if you have psoriasis. So we've tried to make it kind of a more general product that's beyond body acne, but for other skin conditions. So that's actually why they're formulated completely differently. You know, can you use the body scrub on your face? Yes. Can you use the face scrub on your body? Yes, technically, but is it recommended? Not really. And then finally, I want to show you some of the bacterial acne set. There's also a toner. What this toner is, it's basically what you would put on before a moisturizer and after basically cleansing your face. And so it's actually not, and you can use the applicator for this too. So it's actually not like a pure toner like when we think of a liquid. This is more of a gel-like toner. And because it's meant to actually get into your pores and sit in your pores, it has 2% gluconolactone and neem. The gluconolactone is a polyhydroxy acid, so that's another very gentle exfoliator, but it also helps hydrate your skin. And it basically also reduces oxidative stress. So again, inflammation. It has witch hazel, about 4% witch hazel, which helps remove excess oil. So the whole point is you clean your pores and then you want to keep them clean. So this is what basically keeps them clean during the day. And then the neem is a great Ayurvedic herb because it basically is also a great antioxidant and it helps improve skin elasticity. So this is basically like after you've done all that work to get your pores clean, the whole point is to keep them clean, even if you're applying a moisturizer afterwards, and SPF, especially SPF, because SPF is known to clog pores. So then we kind of come to, well, okay, you guys talk about skin, gut, brain, you know, what about the gut? So I'm just going to very quickly, because I don't want to, everybody's been here for a long time, so I don't want to, you know, annoy you too much. And for those of you who've stayed, thank you, you know, for being there. You've probably, you know, if you had a teenager and you've taken them to a dermatologist, they've told you to cut back on sugar and refined carbs and greasy ultra-processed foods. You know, less McDonald's is good because high glycemic, high sugar diets can spike insulin and IGF-1. And that basically is the insulin resistance that then starts promoting more sebum production and that whole acne cycle again. Whereas diets that are richer in whole foods, fiber, omega-3 fats, which are actually really important for acne, and antioxidants, not only support a healthier gut, but also they lower inflammation in general. And so that makes your skin less reactive, which is why basically diet and nutrition are being seen more and more important in acne care. But if you have, you know, if you basically don't want to change your diet that much, then we do have some aids. And so one of them basically is for people who do have those kinds of diets. This is the probiotic, and it's been actually designed specifically for acne. So not to be mixed up with our eczema probiotic, which is green. They work in completely different ways. They actually target different parts of the immune system that's modulated by the gut. So this contains Google. So Google helps lower cholesterol. Again, cholesterol is a precursor to the androgens, which cause the sebum production. It's also anti-inflammatory. And the active component here, glucosterone, has been studied actually in the dermatological literature and has been demonstrated to be pretty much as effective as antibiotics. In the case of the study, it was tetracycline, especially for nodulocystic acne and any individual with basically oily skin. So this is actually great for inflammation and for sebum regulation. It also has green tea in it. So the EGCG from green tea, which is a great anti-inflammatory, but it's also an anti-androgenic agent. So basically inhibits lipid production in the sebocytes, which reduces pore clogging. So it goes back to, again, reducing that excess oil. And then the probiotic species here, there's 9 different probiotic strains from 3 different genera. And that basically supplements the gut microbiome. So there's our friends, you know, lactobacillus. So they have the anti-inflammatory properties and they increase the levels of IL-10, which basically helps reduce inflammation. But there's also bifidobacterium species in here, and those help reduce glucose levels that can trigger inflammation. And Bacillus coagulans, this is a spore-based, this is unique to this probiotic. It's not just anti-inflammatory, but it helps lowers blood lipids. And again, if you lower the cholesterol and blood lipids, there's not as many for which the body can use to pretty much produce sebum. It also helps make short-chain fatty acids, so basically it helps with gut inflammation. And then we added vitamin B2, also known as riboflavin, because again, we're trying to reduce skin dryness, to reduce the sebum overproduction and support collagen, again, for the wound healing so people don't scar. So this is basically kind of for bacterial acne, acne on your cheeks, acne on your forehead. And then the hormonal acne set has our hormonal supplement. This is more for either adolescent acne. So this is actually good for both. So I should actually, sorry, so you can see it. Basically, this is actually great for both adolescent males and females. As well as women with adult hormonal acne or polycystic ovary syndrome, PCOS. And why is that? Because basically this contains a set of different herbs that modulate this issue of sex hormones, steroid hormones, insulin levels, and inflammation. So holy basil, or tulsi, which again comes from Ayurveda, is an adaptogenic anti-inflammatory herb, so that relieves stress, which is the cortisol, which then leads to androgens. And it also helps decrease glucose levels, so that's the insulin resistance. It has turmeric, which is why it's yellow. So again, careful, can make everything yellow, which is a great anti-inflammatory. That's a major antioxidant. Milk thistle is great. It contains an active called silmarin, which is liver supporting and anti-inflammatory. And again, it has been studied specifically for acne and compared to antibiotic doxycycline, and it's been shown to be very efficacious, similar to doxycycline antibiotic. Then we have barberry, which is another anti-inflammatory, but it's also anti-lipogenic. So again, it helps reduce the cholesterol and it helps reduce the lipidics in the blood, so you don't produce as much sebum. L-theanine, you've probably heard, this is a great cortisol reducer because it modulates brain function and it helps promote relaxation. Then we have MSM, which is an anti-inflammatory dietary supplement. So again, this one's interesting because it helps support the production of glutathione, which is very important. It's a great antioxidant in the body. And then the two other heroes here are the myoinositol. So this contains 2 grams of myoinositol, which reduces plasma testosterone, free testosterone and insulin when it's consistently administered. So this is why myoinositol is used for PCOS. And it also increases folic acid. So it contains folic acid, which is important for not just depression and memory, but it also helps improve insulin resistance and decrease testosterone levels. So overall, this is why we call it the hormonal acne set, because this piece is used to balance hormones. And for some people, they actually end up getting both because, again, some of these conditions are not simple. So you may have a gut component, you may have a hormonal component. You might basically use the probiotic for 2 to 3 months. That fixes your gut. And as long as your diet is good, then you pretty much are set. But if you have a hormonal, genetic hormonal predisposition, or predisposition to insulin resistance, you might end up needing that hormonal supplement for much, much longer or through very stressful periods. So that's why we have all these different combinations because we want to create and build systems. If you have any questions about any of this, just email us at support@codexlabscorp.com. We are more than happy to basically help you. And then in another week, we're going to have our Decode Me telehealth platform launching, and we're going to be rolling it out in different states over the next 6 months. And we will have naturopathic doctors and dermatologists, integrative dermatologists on it, who specialize in things like hormonal acne, for example, and who take a really whole body approach, including, if you need them, diagnostics, like measuring your hormone levels, measuring your gut microbiome, measuring your inflammation levels. So we'll finish up here. I don't know if there's any questions. Let's see if there's, when do we do a live for eczema? We'll be doing another live for eczema next month. So we're basically going to be doing kind of lives every month, one for eczema, one for acne, and at some point we'll be adding oncology, which is very similar to eczema. And so Yeah, so pretty much if you guys have any last minute questions, type them into the chat. Otherwise, we will kind of wrap up in the next couple minutes. Maybe Nina can type in the discount code again if you want to try any of these products out. And definitely if you have questions, I'm going to type the email in here. We love hearing from you. We love helping. I'm an engineer, so to me, it's like problem solving. Every person is unique. And again, acne is probably even more complex than eczema, but it's treatable, and it can be managed long-term without necessarily having to use all these harsh products. So thank you again for participating, and thanks for listening and hanging in there for over an hour with us. So really appreciate it, and we'll see you guys next month.